So Deborah, you got one? Charlie, you got one? Did you get one?
Brother Sykes, would you turn this microphone down a little bit? It's a little too loud.
Everybody has a copy of the list? Okay. Brother Fall, will you give us a word of prayer?
Most holy righteous Heavenly Father, whose being has passed us, He has blessed us with another beautiful opportunity to study another portion from the holy and divine word. For that reason alone, we all should say thank you, God. Father God, we just as you present the lesson this morning, pleasure with our readers so you can see it with clarity. Drop the word which is faith in the spirit of our soul. We are here, we all know it, you're beautiful. Through the Son, Jesus' name I pray.
Okay, I'm going to sign certain member scriptures, so when I call for them, you'll already have it. Sister Bonita, you have Mark 4:39. If you need a pencil, I need you to write that down so you'll have it already. You also have Matthew 8:23 and 27. Okay? Sister Dot, you have Hebrew 11:6. Might want to write that down. And 2 Timothy 4:7. Okay. Sister Annie, you have Mark 4:41. And you also have St. John 18:11. Brother Washington, you have Luke 22:3 through 33. Okay. Sister Deborah, you have Matthew 10:34 and 39. Brother Charlie, you have Ezekiel 5:2 and James 1:19 through 26. 19, John 1:19, James 1:19 through 26. Brother Falk, you have James 3:1 through 14. And 1 Peter 3:1 through, 12 through 15. 1 Peter 3. Yeah, because I'm trying to figure that out. It's 12 through 15? Okay, because you had me confused. I'm confused with that one. Okay. Which sometimes we had to correct in our typing. Okay, that covers all of our scriptures. Okay. 1 Peter 3:1 through 14. And, James, 1 Peter 3:12 through 15. And then I gave you James 3:1 through 14. Okay, I have a few questions you might want to write down because you're going to be asked these questions as we go through the lesson. The first question is, number one, have you been through a storm? I want to write that down. Number two, have you had a storm experience? These are things you'll be thinking on as we go through the lesson. Okay. Have you had a storm experience? Let me know when you're finished. I got about 2 or 3 more. Just things that you're going to be thinking on as we go through the lesson. Are you ready for number 3? Okay. These things help us understand the lesson much better.
What is number 2?
Number 2 is, have you had a storm experience?
What was number 1?
Number 1, have you been through a storm? I ain't got number 3 yet. He on still number 2. I don't want to rush it. I don't wanna rush it. There's no rush. There's no rush. We're not going nowhere, are we? Okay. Nobody got a plane to catch. We're taking our time. Number 3 is, are you a storm survivor? Keep that last word in mind. Are you a storm survivor? Everybody finished with number 3? Number 4 is, have you learned to appreciate the storm? I know that's a tough question, but it's a good one. Have you learned to appreciate the storm? Then we're going to start in our lesson. Okay, now that everyone has a copy of the lesson and some things that you're going to be thinking on as we go through the lesson, what is our subject for today? The storms of life. What can you tell me about a storm in general, Sister Benita?
Well, a storm is something that can toss you from one way to another because you got the winds. And then you can also get from water. You can get float away from somewhere that you don't want to go.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be in an area of where it is. So, a storm is a powerful thing.
It is. And we've had a few happen.
Oh, yes.
We've had a few. Can you think of some occasions that we've had a few storms, sister? That you were in, a few storms in your note? Can you name a few of the storms that we've come through here in Florida?
You got different kind of storms.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, brother. Yeah, he right. We do. Tell me about some of the storms that we have experienced here in Florida.
Well, you had Francis, Charlie, and Jean.
Look at him.
Came three times and knocked out a whole bunch of stuff, even up here.
Uh-huh.
You had, what was that last one just had that had us without power for 3 weeks?
Mhm.
And as soon as I go get a generator, the lights come back on.
All right. How many of y'all remember Katrina?
Oh, yeah.
I can't forget
But
Katrina.
we didn't have them, but the thing of it is, it still was a deadly storm.
We were touched by Katrina. It didn't hit us, but we were touched by Katrina. Huh?
Oh, yeah, don't forget about Charlie.
We did. Them 3 back to back storm. So do we think we got over, another one hit us. And some of us did good, and some of us didn't do too good. But anyway, all of us can say that we have been through storms. Am I right? That's why I brought that lesson up, because she got to know where she named a couple of storms. Did the storms cost us? Were there great expense during some of the
But
storms?
just think about the storm that we just had unknowingly just a couple months ago. I'm still paying for it.
All right.
I'm fighting now with insurance where I wasn't fighting with insurance.
Hello.
Just to get windows taken care
Hello.
of.
Hello.
Of a little hailstorm.
Hello. Yes.
So that's just the physical storms.
Storms affect us all. Come on, sis, you got your hand up. I know you're eager to talk. Talk to me.
Well, I'm just gonna say a storm is a disturbance that shakes up your life.
All right. She's saying what I want. It can shake you out. Have you ever been shaken up? Storm can shake you out. It can shake you out. Yes.
Because if we realize we're going through it, or not.
We're going through some storm. You live in Florida. You're going through some storm. You're going through some storm. Going through some storm. Okay, we're just dealing with the physical side of the storm to get you to understand what Jesus and the disciples were going through. Because see, when you read that, you really don't understand what they were going through. But when you understand the storms, and those of us who live in Florida, we've been through storms. We've had some experience, and we're still reeling from the devastation of the storm that happened years ago. New Orleans is still reeling from Katrina. This happened years ago. Because I believe if you looked at your note right down there at the bottom, Katrina cost New Orleans about what, 90 million, 80 billion? What it says there? $80 billion. $80 billion. That's how much damage that storm done to that city. 80 billion. Think about that. There were people without homes. There were people who had to be shipped to the Houston Superdome. They had nowhere to live. Everything they had been destroyed. They were shipping them way up north. They had nowhere to put them because they were homeless. I witnessed a man walking through the street crying because as the water filled his house, he and his wife got up and tried to get through the roof, and he was trying to hold her and his children. And she told him to let her go. He was crying after it was over. Lost, didn't know what to do. I had to let her go. I couldn't save her and my children. I could feel his pain. We're here in Florida because of what he had gone through. So storms leave damage. They leave us confused. They leave us upset. So most of us here have gone through storm. We've had storm experience. We've been through storms. We've had storm experience. And we are storm survivors. Are you a storm survivor, Sister Benita? All right. I heard Brother Sipes talk about some of the storm that Sister Benita had been in. And he said for, I think, 4 weeks, she laid in a coma. Am I right?
40 days.
40 days in a coma. And he didn't know whether she was going to live or die. That's the storm. Sitting there watching a loved one in a coma. You can talk to her, but she can't talk to you. You don't know how she's going to come out. You don't even know whether or not she's going to buy. I don't even want to picture that in my mind because I don't want to experience that. But he had to go through that. She's here. Tells me she's what? A storm survivor. A storm survivor. And I can tell you many storms that I've been through. I think it was 1997. It's one of my experiences. My mother-in-law had passed. And I and my wife, and we went down there, and then my wife stayed. And I came back home because I had some things to do. And that morning, I got a phone call from Sister Williams. She wanted to ride with me. And I said, no, I got to get on down there and be with her because the funeral starts soon. And Sister Collins had wanted to ride, but I didn't know about her until afterward. And so I took off, and I'm heading down to Bradenton, getting ready to go and be with my wife. And before I got to the funeral, I was involved in a wreck. Think about it. I'm on my way to my mother-in-law's funeral, and I'm hit by a semi. My car is totaled. And I walk out of the car. Unhurt. My wife could have had 2 funerals in one day, but she didn't know that because she's in Bradenton dealing with a mother funeral. I caught a ride with a guy. He took me to my mother-in-law's house. I got dressed, got in my wife's car because I had a key and drove to the funeral and walked into the church. The funeral had already started, and I sat down beside her and held her hand. My wife had no idea what had happened. I didn't tell her. Even when we got back to the house, I didn't tell her. I came back home. She didn't know until the next day. One of her aunties told her. She was upset with me. Why you didn't tell me you was in a wreck? What for? You were burying your mother. I said, baby, the God knew you couldn't deal with my death and your mother. Picture dealing with both our death. You burying your mother and all your husband get killed. You picture that. That's a nightmare. That's a storm. I went through that storm in '87. And very few of you all even know that story until now. But I survived it. I walked away from that wreck without a hurt on me. Went to my wife's funeral, mother's funeral, and sat beside her and never said a word. Because I tried to picture in my mind what she was going through. And most of you that have lost a mother, you know what you go through. We've always lost one. We know what we're going through. So that's one of the storms of my life. And I can go with many, many storms of life that I've been through. But I'm a storm survivor. I'm here. God carried me and my wife through. And a few years after that, we were getting ready to go to a singing. I tell you about this one. We were getting ready to go to a singing in Winter Haven. My baby boy was staying with some friends in Sebring. I said, no, let's go get my son because I want all the kids home. I want to make sure they're all home so when we leave, we know they're safe. We headed down towards Sebring, and it was raining. The weather was bad, raining bad. Me and my wife fully dressed for church. I get to Wells Motor, something happened. I step on the brake. In a few seconds, my expedition is bottom sides up. My wife and I have been involved in a wreck. We're going to a gospel singing. We didn't see this coming. We walked out unscathed. That's the storm we went through. That's another storm we went through. The car was totaled, but we were safe. God was with us. We went through, and we've gone through many more storms. But most of us are storm survivors, and we've gone through storms. So we've had some storm experience. So we know the damage that storm leave. And she told you about a few, and I told you about Katrina. It cost them $90 or $80 billion. And she got many, many more storms there that have cost the United States. I mean, I think Katrina, it was 25 lives taken. But in some of the storms, over 2,000 people lost their lives. Yeah, and we don't have to mention about the coronavirus. How many people have lost their lives? We're still here. We're still here. God has us here and God kept Sister Bonita here because, believe it or not, when she was in that coma, do you not know that God knew today Bonita would be here with us? He knew in advance that we would be here. So we've gone through storms. So we're talking about the storms of life. And I need to start reading in Mark. Now that you know something about storm, read Mark 4:39. Go back up to 38.
And he was in his.
Go up a little further.
35.
What it say?
And the same day.
All right, now.
And the same day, when the even came, he said it to them, let's pass over unto the other side.
Let's go to the other side. It's even. It's even. Jesus is weary from what he was doing. Okay.
And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship, and there was also with him other little ship, and there arose a great storm.
And there arose a great storm. Watch this now.
Of wind, and the waves beat unto the ship, so that it was now full
Full of water.
And he was in the hinder part of the ship,
He was in the inner part of the ship. He was down in the bottom.
asleep on a pillow.
He was asleep on a pillow. We're talking about Jesus.
Awoke him,
And they woke him up.
and said unto him, Master, carest not that we shall perish?
Do you care whether or not we're going to die or perish? Keep that in mind. Do you care whether or not we're going to perish? Come on.
And arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still.
Peace, be still. What happened?
And the wind ceased,
Wind ceased.
and there was a great calm.
That was a great calm.
And he said unto them,
And he said unto them,
Why are you so fearful?
what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? He asked the question, what are you afraid of? Come on.
How is that ye have no faith?
All right.
And they feared exceedingly, and said unto another,
Listen now.
What manner of man
They're talking among themselves. What kind of man is this?
that even the wind
That even
and
the wind and the sea
obey him?
obey him. Okay, think about that. Now go to the next verse. Keep that one. Go to the next verse. Go to Matthew 8. You already have it. 8:23. Now he told them that they had no faith, but somewhere else he's going to tell them something else. Here he says no faith. I think in the next chapter he's going to say no faith. Come on.
And he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the town.
Okay, no, let's stop right there. Okay, let's stop right there. Then I have it in my note. Let me go back there. Okay, let's go back to where she just read, because I thought that was it's another verse on the storm, and that was 8:23. Matthew 8:23.
Yeah, that's 8:23.
That was still in Mark, wasn't it?
Mark.
Mark was
Oh,
4:30.
I'm sorry, Matthew. I'm sorry.
Matthew 8:23. Yeah, because I know that should have been about the storm, should have been about the blind man. But let's see. Try it again. Read again.
Which one?
Matthew 8:23.
Okay, got it.
What it says.
And when he was entering into the ship.
Now, I knew something didn't sound right. See, when the verse don't match the lesson, there's something wrong. That's why I told her that don't sound right. Now you sounded all right. Come on now.
His disciples followed him.
His disciple followed him. And behold,
there arose a great tempest
that was a great storm. That's what he's saying.
in the sea,
Uh-huh.
insomuch that the ship was covered with the waves,
Ship was covered with the waves.
but he was asleep.
He was asleep. Now, when the waves hit New Orleans, one of the historians said in that chapter I gave her that those waves were 15 feet high. Can you picture a 15 feet high wind? How tall is this building? I guarantee you it's not 15 feet high. Those waves that hit New Orleans were 15 feet high. I'm only, I think I'm 5'11". So those waves were probably like 3 or 4 times my height. Picture. This building is not, a basketball goal is 10 feet high. I can't reach it. Those waves were 15 feet high. Picture what New Orleans went through. Keep reading. The waves covered the boat.
And the disciples came to him
And the disciples came to him.
and awoke him,
And they woke him out. Saying,
Lord,
Lord,
save
save us.
us. We perish.
We perish.
And he said unto them,
And he said to them,
Why are you fearful?
what are you afraid of?
O ye of little faith.
Now what did he say in Mark? He said no faith. Here he said little faith. Come on.
And he arose
He arose.
and rebuked the wind
Uh-huh.
and the sea,
And the sea.
and there was a great calm.
That was a great calm. Now, my point in this lesson is, when the storm came, they were at sea. And the storms practically, I think said the waves covered the boat. But what you don't understand is that there were 4 men on that boat, Brother Falk, that should have been familiar with the storm. How many of y'all knew that? How many of y'all knew that there were 4 men on that boat? Brother Washington. What was Peter when Jesus met him?
Fishermen.
He was a fisherman. How many fishermen are not familiar with storm?
Yeah.
Peter, John, James, and Andrew. What were they? They were fishermen. How do you know? Because Andrew and Peter and John were fishermen, and Andrew and James were doing what when Jesus met them?
Fixing on nets.
They were what do you think they were fishing the net for? They were going fishing. They were fishermen. That tell me the net had broke somewhere in their lives, fishermen. So what fishermen at that era that have not experienced storm? These 4 men should have been familiar with the storm because they were fishermen. Now the rest probably didn't know much about it, but now these 4, they should have been familiar. But all of a sudden when the wave filled the ship, they got afraid. Why do you think they got afraid when the wave filled the ship? You think maybe they had had some storm experience? You think maybe they had seen a few ships sink while they were fishing, Brother Washington?
They probably have never been in a storm like that.
Okay, that's a possibility.
And it takes an experience, because
Yeah.
if you don't go through something, then how can you say you experience it?
Yeah.
You have to go through
Well, see, at that time, fishermen, and they were professional fishermen, they knew a certain time of the year not to go out to sea. They knew that. They were trained. They knew, I can't go fishing today because the weather is not quite right. So how they knew, I don't know, because they didn't have our technology. But they knew stuff. They knew at a certain time, I can't go there. I can't fish. It's not wise. And they didn't do it. And we read about Paul's experience in the storm when the ship was towed up and everything. Okay? But these men should have been familiar with the storm because they were fishermen. This was their occupation. And when Jesus met Peter, he said, Peter was a fisherman. He said, Peter, come follow me. And I'll do what? I'll change your occupation. You're going to still be a fisherman. Am I right? What you going to be fishing after? You're going to fish after men. He changed Peter's occupation. He'll change yours today if you let him. But my point is, when the storm arrived, they asked him the question. They woke him up. He was asleep. He wasn't worried about the storm. Why do you think he wasn't worried about the storm?
He created it.
He created the storm. They were afraid. And they woke him up and they asked him a question. Master, do you care that we perish? Do you realize how many miracles these men had witnessed at Jesus' hand before this incident happened? Read your Bible. They had witnessed miracles after miracles. I think they also witnessed Lazarus being raised from the dead. Jesus opened the eyes of the blind. They witnessed Jesus cast demons out of people. At that time, demons would get in the mind of people and they had no control. They would just cut themselves and do all kind of crazy things. And finally, and if you notice, if you study your lesson carefully, when Jesus came upon a man who had some demons in it, you know what those demons said? We know who you are. They recognized Jesus. These men were out of their mind. They had demons in their head. But they knew Jesus. As crazy as they were, they knew Jesus. And they asked him, why are you come to trouble us before time? They knew something that we don't know. Those demons recognized Jesus. And he cast them out of people. These men had witnessed all this stuff. But yet when the storm arrived, they were afraid. And then they asked the question to Jesus, do you care that we perish? He was the Savior. Sure he cared. They should have known that by now. They should have known that by now. But they were afraid. And the reason they were afraid, Brother Washington told us last Sunday, the reason they were afraid because their faith had become what? It had become weak. It was, Jesus, on one occasion he said, you have none. In the next chapter he said, you have little. Their faith had become weak. Come on, sister, get your hand up.
That's the same way we are today.
Yes. When we go through storm,
God first.
we become afraid. We panic. We panic. Why are we panicking? Wasn't Jesus on the ship? Why should they have been afraid? I didn't see this man cast out demons. I didn't see him raise people from the dead, open the eyes of the blind, and I'm letting the storm bother me? The master is on the ship. What is my message to the church this morning? The master is on the ship. What are you afraid of? Why is it that when little storms hit us, we get afraid? We panic. We run. We question whether or not Jesus loves us. Yes, he does. He died on Calvary for us. We should know this by now. Come on.
We should be asking ourselves, where is our faith?
Yes. Our faith. It's the evidence that our faith has become what? A little weak. On one occasion, the disciples told Jesus to strengthen their faith. Come on, bro, watch.
And also, fear will do that to you.
Yes, yes, we allow fear, we allow fear. I knew a lady, I don't know what she was going through, but she was so afraid. When I would come to her house, she would open the door, but she would come outside. She was on a medication that had her that way. It's certain medications they give people, they will not leave their own house. Did you know that? It's called psychotropic medication. You'll be afraid to leave your own house. She was going through the thing and they had on medication. She was afraid to walk out the door. That's how much fear is. And I've had to tell people that I knew was going through this. You can't allow fear to dictate your life. What are we afraid of? Didn't Jesus say he would be with us always? We need to keep that in mind. I will be with you always. Let's get rid of our fear. Love conquers fear. Didn't the Bible tell us that? He that feareth is not made perfect in love. Okay. Because love's supposed to cast out fear. So when the storm arrived, they became afraid and they woke Jesus up and they asked him, do you care that we perish? And when Jesus got up, he said to the sea, peace, be still. The sea was raging. We know what the sea can do. It tore down the walls of Katrina. We know what it can do. But when Jesus spoke to it, did it rage anymore? What's happened when the church is raging and Jesus has spoken? Should we cease? Sometimes we're still raging in the church and the storm is gone. We're still raging. Jesus has already spoken. He said as much as possible, little peace with all men. He's already spoken. He spoke to the sea and the sea did not rage anymore. The wind did not blow in him. We can't control nature. He did. And when he did it, those men began to mumble among themselves. What kind of man is this? That even the sea and the wind obey. What message is that to us as Christians? If the sea and the wind can cease when the master speaks, what happens when he speaks to us today when we're raging in the church? You think the church ought to get calm? You think the church ought to see? I'm just dealing with that. But anyway, that's just a storm. I'm talking about storm. Now I'm talking about y'all. I'm talking about storm. Okay. The storms. Okay, we know about the storm. I let Sister Benita gave you a little history on the storm that we've had in our lives. Hurricane Andrew, 8,000 employees were completely destroyed. Let me see. Jobs were destroyed. The Air Force Base was destroyed. That was 165 miles an hour wind. It hit Dade and Broward County. Irma, most deadliest storm ever happened in 2017. Michael, 2018, Category 5. 1989, Floyd hit Orlando. 2004, 5 hurricanes hit Florida. Charlie hit, we know about Charlie. Charlie, well known. Okay, Andrew hit. Charlie hit in 2004. Andrew, 1992. Francis hit in 2004. I think she's some related to Charlie, maybe his wife. I don't know. I'm just okay. Okay. Michael, 2018. Irma, 2017. 2000. Francis was 2004. Irma, 2017. $92 billion worth of damage that was done. And most of us knew about Donna, but that was in 1960, way before many of our time. Remember, they joked about Donna, how she tore up Miami. Irma, okay, September 1950, 2021, they were more active. Katrina, 2,000 died, $80 billion worth of damage was done. Okay, August the 25th. Okay, that's when they had those 15-foot waves. But these are just a few of the storms that I've read that we've gone through. So we know what storms can do. We know the damage can we do. But do we know about the aftermath? We'll probably deal with that later on. Go to Hebrew 11:6. But keep what I told you about the aftermath. The aftermath happened after the storm has passed. Okay? Keep that in mind. Okay? What was the purpose of the storm? Hebrew 11:6.
But without faith, it is impossible to please him.
Mm-hmm.
For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him.
Now, Jesus knew that storm was coming. And the purpose of that storm was to do what, Brother Washington? You told us last Sunday. To test their faith. That's what Jesus was doing. He was sleeping, didn't worry about the storm. He knew it was coming. He knows all things. But the purpose of that storm was to test their faith. They failed the test. And he told them, oh, you have little faith. You don't have none. Then he said, you don't have little. Their faith, they became weak. But he tested their faith. Okay? And faith is important. And she just read it. Hebrew 11:6 said, without it, we can't please God. We must have faith. Because without faith, we'll never please God. 2 Timothy 4:7. Let's see what it says.
I have fought a good fight.
Now Paul said in his lifetime, he said, I fought a good fight.
And I have finished my course.
I finished my course.
I have kept the faith.
I have kept the faith. He never lost it. He never wavered. You know? And what he said now, because, to show you why faith is so important, because he kept the faith, because he finished his course, what did he say? There's some more in there. Keep reading.
Oh, keep going all the way to 8.
Keep reading.
There
Hereafter.
is laid up for me.
I got something coming because I kept the faith. Because I fought a good fight, because I finished my course. I got something coming. Come on. What I got coming?
Herefore there is laid up for me.
Listen now.
A crown of righteousness.
A crown of righteousness.
Which the Lord
the righteous judge.
should give me at that
He gonna give that to me at that day.
and not to me only,
It's not just for me only, Paul says.
but unto all them also that love his appearance.
He gonna take care of all of those that love his appearance. Okay? So it's important that we keep the faith. It's important that we fight a good fight. It is important that we finish our course. In other words, Paul said, I've done what the master have called me to do. Okay? Jesus knew about the storm. I told you that who has Mark 4:41?
I do,
Come on. Jesus knew about the storm.
yeah. And they feared exceedingly
Mm-hmm.
and said one to another.
Oh, go back up. Go back up. Okay.
And he said unto them, why are ye so fearful?
Mm-hmm.
How is it that ye have no faith?
You have no faith.
And they feared exceedingly
Mhm.
and said one to another,
Mhm.
what manner of man is
What manner of man is this?
that even the wind and the sea obey
They
him.
obey. Yes, and I said before, when he spoke, they obeyed. They stepped. They stopped. They couldn't figure out what kind of man he was. As I said before, when he speak, the sea and that word that means sea. What she got that T there, but that T shouldn't be there. Am I right? That T shouldn't be there. The sea and the wind stopped, and the question is when Jesus speak to us today, who are we to not cease from whatever? And I said the question: are there any in our lives? Are there any? Well, that should be: are there any storms in our lives that God can come? As He comes to see, we ask the question: are there any storms? Add that to that. Are there any storms in our lives that God will come? Do you think that you are going through any storms that God can't come? Come on, see your hand up.
What was the question again?
The question is, as she read the lesson about when Jesus spoke to the storm and the wind, they ceased. They became calm. And the question is to the church, are there any storms in your life that you're going through that you think Jesus can't calm? That's the question. He calmed the sea. He calmed the wind and the evil nature that we have no control over. So are there any storms? I may not know what storm you're going through. It doesn't matter. But do you believe that there are any storm that you're going through that God can't calm? Or that He can't carry you through? Can He, Sister Benita? There is not a storm that occur in our lives that God can't carry us through. If He don't carry you through the storm, you know what your problem is? Hebrews 11:6, without faith. That's it. If you don't have no faith, I don't care what storm you're going through in life, Brother Washington, you'll never get through the storm. We have to have faith in God to get through the storm. And we've been through a few storms. We've been through a few hurricanes. Not even a storm. Sometimes twisters tear us up. Little twisters. Not even a big storm. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, little storm. We shake us out. God forbid we hit have a big one. We're in trouble. But there is no storm in our life that God can't calm. Keep that in mind as you go through life. No matter what storm you're going through in life. And all of us experience storms in different ways. As Sister Benita was in a coma for 40-some days, and I being in a wreck going to my mother-in-law's funeral, my wife and I being in a wreck going to a gospel singing. These were storms in life. But God carried us through all those storms. Okay? Did I give someone John 18:11?
Brother Jesse,
Come on.
there's one more storm that if y'all don't remember,
Uh-huh.
y'all remember when I had that 2020, that Toyota?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you.
That when, this is how bad that wreck was.
Right.
The highway patrol called the coroners
Yeah.
to shut down 27.
Mm-hmm.
When he gets there, he says, "Where is the driver?"
With
The driver is over there checking on the other driver, but she want me to get her husband out of this car.
right.
Is he still alive? Yes, he's alive, talking with the engine in his lap.
Ooh.
This is Herbert.
Yep.
So remember, whatever happens,
Yeah.
God has it. Now,
He got it.
this highway patrol is getting ready to, when I didn't know that
Uh-huh.
it is law that you got to, if there is a death on the road,
Right.
that is why they shut it down, referred it.
Yep.
They was going to shut 27 down
I believe it. I believe it. I believe it.
and thinking that we were dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to get them to get Herbert out the car,
Right.
and they are trying, I'm up here checking on the driver.
Yep.
I'm still trying to figure out where he came from.
Yep.
There
It
was
happened.
It was nothing in front of us.
It happens. It happens. It
And
happens.
I ought doing 30 miles per hour,
Yep.
total of 3-month-old 2020.
Yes, it happened. It can happen. It happened without it. And see, storms sometimes come without. Sometimes they come without warning. I would say that. But let me. My nephew. Some of y'all met him. Brother Washington met him. He came down from Chicago and he wanted a job, and he got one at the warehouse over there working, making $19 an hour. And I loaned him my little Toyota car because he didn't have one at the time. And I said, okay, you can drive my car until you get one. And so one day I'm at work, it's on Saturday, and I get a phone call. Your nephew's in a wreck. You know, that's all you hear. You don't know where he's dead or alive. I'm knowing he's in Port Charlotte. And I get the call, and I'm still at work, but I'm trying to get off. And my niece called me, and she said, I'm going to meet, they're shipping him to Fort Myers Hospital. I'm going to meet you. So I said, well, meet me at the job, and we'll stop in Arcadia. We'll ride together, and we'll head to Fort Myers. And that's what we did. We got to Fort Myers. Now, I don't know what his condition is. And I'm trying to call Fort Myers Hospital to see whether he's dead or alive, because that's all I know. He's in a wreck. Okay, and when we did get to the hospital and talked to him, I said, tell me what happened. He said, the guy that hit me with the truck went to sleep. He said, when that guy hit me, he drugged me, I don't know how far. He said, while I was in that car, I heard the man on the phone calling his boss, saying, I just hit a black guy, and I don't know whether he's dead or alive. You know, think about it. He's hearing this stuff. And he said, I hit it. So that's how bad his wreck was. And I'm thinking that he got hit in my little car. I'm saying, I know he's gone. But just so happened, he wasn't driving my car. He was driving the company bus. Now, the vehicle he was driving is where he hauls people back and forth to the airport. Thank God he had put them out. It was just him in there. But you picture him getting hit in my car. And that was on my mind, because I didn't know he was driving the company vehicle. I'm thinking, oh, my nephew in a wreck. He in my little car. You know, I'm saying, oh, God. You're hoping for the best, but you don't know. Because I'm miles from him. I'm in Arcadia. He's in Fort Myers. So my niece and I get over there. We get to the hospital. We find out he's okay. We get to the wrong hospital. It says the wrong hospital. Had to go find another hospital. In Fort Myers, they know the place. Finally, we find him. We get up to his room. They let us see him. And he's had a fractured vertebrae. And so we're there talking with him. And I said, man, what happened? He said, his uncle, the man went to sleep that hit me. And he said, while I was in the vehicle, he drugged me for a while. He said, while I was in the vehicle, I'm hearing him tell his boss, I don't know whether this guy did or alive. That was the storm that we went through. And this just a few months ago. And, you know, but like I said, those things happened, but God was with him. He's still alive. He could have been gone. But keep in mind that no matter what storm that we go through in life, there is not a storm that God cannot calm, he cannot carry us through, but we have to keep the faith. If we lose our faith, you'll never survive the storm. Okay, who has John 18:11?
I do.
Come on, let's see what it said.
Then said Jesus unto Peter,
Mm-hmm.
put up thy sword into the sheath, that the cup which my Father hath given me,
Mm-hmm.
shall I not drink it?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, he said, put up, keep reading the
and
phone.
then the band
Wait, go back up one verse above 11. Go back to 10.
okay, then Simon Peter, having a sword,
Go back to verse 9.
that the saying might be fulfilled,
Mm-hmm.
which ye spoke
Uh-huh.
of them which thou giveth me, have I lost none.
Okay.
Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it, and smacked the high priest's servant, and cut off his right ear.
Okay, when Jesus' enemies came to take his life, remember Peter had said earlier, he told him, I will die with you, I will not deny you. And so when they came to take Jesus' life, Peter pulled out his sword and ready to defend Jesus, and he cut off the high priest's servant ear. Come on.
And the servant's name was Malchus.
Okay, I don't have that verse. Okay, come on.
And then said Jesus unto Peter, put up thy sword.
Jesus told Peter, put up his sword.
The cup which my Father had given me, shall
Mhm.
I not drink it?
Okay.
And
Was that verse 11?
yeah,
Okay. The lesson here is when Jesus' enemy came to take his life. Remember Peter had told him earlier, I will not deny you, I'll die with you. And so when they came to take his life, Peter pulled out his sword seriously, ready to defend Jesus. But the problem in that lesson is Peter was fighting with the wrong sword. Peter was fighting with the physical sword, and Jesus had told him earlier, he that live by the sword will die by the sword. So Peter took out his sword, and I think he was sincere when he told Jesus he wasn't to die with him. But when he took out the sword and cut the high priest's servant ear off, Jesus told him to put it up. Peter, you're fighting with the wrong sword. The sword that Jesus wanted Peter to fight with was the word of God. The question to us today, what sword are you fighting with? Are you fighting with the physical sword, or are you fighting with the spiritual sword? Sometimes we find ourselves fighting with the physical sword, don't we? when problems arrive in life. We can never win fighting with the physical sword. We have to learn to keep fighting with the spiritual sword, okay? Okay, I say I put that in there. Sometimes we have issues with our family members. We feel like cutting off their ear, don't we? More than the ear, head, nose, feet, sometimes the whole body. But that just something I put in there to as a humor. So we have to learn. I can't fight with the physical sword anymore. I have to fight with the spiritual sword because we have to remember who we are. We're God's children. We're God's children, and so we have to fight with the spiritual sword. It's easy to fight with that physical sword because it's so easy to pick it up. We're accustomed to it, but we have to learn to get used to fighting with the spiritual sword, and that spiritual sword is the Word of God, okay? I had something about this drama, okay. That drama. Okay, let's see what, did I have Luke? Someone got Luke 22? Let's see what Luke has, what Luke 22:3 has. 22, start at verse 3. I may not read all of this. Yeah, don't read all of it. I'm trying to see what I got here. I gave Sister Benita this on note. Let me go to Luke and see what I got here. After I've done this with my note, let me see. My job, men love this. We treat them for this. Oh, okay. What did I say? Yeah, I think we're dealing with drama. There are people who love to have drama, and I talked about men on my job who love drama. They will do things just to create drama, and we treat them for this. They love seeing other people fight among themselves, and they'll say or do things that cause drama, and sometimes that happens in the church. People love drama, and they'll say things, and this is called a mill issue on my job with guys that I got one guy, he just loves drama. And every day he comes with drama. He'll say things just to see how people react. You know what I'm saying? Have we seen people like in the church? They'll say and do things just to see how people act. They have drama. Let me go back to this, get my note, Okay, found it? Yeah, okay. Let's see my note said. Okay, they love drama, their lives. Okay, this is a part of their lives. They live for this. They live for drama. Some people just live for drama. I have family members who just love drama. And I have to learn to avoid them because the Bible tells us that, don't it? Mark them that cause offense and avoid them. There are people that love drama. On my job, we call it a mill issue. We treat them for this. That's what I meant about that. We treat them for the drama. Okay? Okay, now we can go to, now let's read a little Luke. Luke, that should have been Luke 22. Okay, that's what would have been Luke 22, 31 and 33. It wasn't that much. 31 should be. It's just 3 verses. Let's see what it says, brother. Did I give you Luke? Yeah. Read Luke 22, 31 and 33. That's what that's supposed to be. That's why I go back to my notes. Let's see what it says.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, and he may sift you like as wheat.
Okay. Jesus told Peter to put up his sword because Peter was fighting with his own sword. And he told him on another occasion, he said, Peter was a good man, and Jesus knew this. And he said, Peter, you may not know this, but Satan has his eye on you. Does he have his eye on us today in the church? Does he want us? He wants us bad. And he said, Peter, I'm going to tell you how bad the devil wants you. He wants you so bad, he will sift you as wheat. Okay? But read on what he said. Brother Washington.
32. But I have prayed for thee.
Is prayer important? Yes, it is. We need to pray for each other every day. Prayer is important. But I have prayed. He said, I prayed for you. Come on. Why did you pray, Lord?
That thy faith fail not.
What were we talking about earlier? Were we talking about faith? He said, Peter, I'm going to pray that your faith don't fail you. Because I know, Peter, if your faith fail you, Satan got you. What happens if our faith fails in church? Does he have us? Yes, he does. Come on. I'm going to pray that your faith don't fail you.
And when thou art converted.
Now, Peter, when you are converted, when you are strengthened, when you are strong, do what?
Strengthen thy
We have to constantly help strengthen each other. Do you not know we have weak members in the church? We have to strengthen them. If we don't strengthen them, what happens? Satan's going to take them. James said he is as a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour. But he also says we are not ignorant of his device. Sometimes we act like we are. We ought to know when the devil is at work. We ought to sort of be familiar with some of his work. But sometimes we're not. Because most times we don't study our Bible. But if you study your Bible, you can see when the devil working. That's the work of the devil. That's the devil work. That's the devil work. So Jesus told Peter, he said, Satan desire you. He wants you. He wants all of us. To the point he would sift you as wheat. He said, but I'm going to pray that your faith don't fail you. We need to pray for each other every day. Prayer is important. The Bible said, pray for all men everywhere, lifting up holy hand without wrath and doubting. And then he said, Peter, when thou art converted, strengthen thy brother. We have to learn to strengthen one another, okay? And we have to pray for one another.
That being said, brother,
Come on.
I know what storm each and every one is going through.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I don't know what storm you're going through.
That's what I'm saying.
But it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Am I all right? I learned about Sister Bonita's storm from her husband, about some of the stuff she told me about the wreck. Some of you never knew about the wreck in '97 on my way to Mother's funeral. Am I right? Until I told you. Didn't even know I was in a wreck on my way to a funeral. But it didn't matter. God was with me. That's the only way I walk in that car, because my car got hit by a semi-truck. You ever seen a car hit by a semi-truck? You have. Ain't no pretty thing. And I was driving that little 87 Nissan Stanza. And this was like 97, like 10 years later. So you can imagine that car being built 10 years earlier ain't as tough as the cars that was, older cars. But just think about it. I was driving an 87 Nissan Stanza when that semi-truck hit my car. And in a split second, my car was towed. They had to tow it away. I couldn't drive it. Had to catch a ride home. But like I say, it doesn't matter. We don't know what storm people are going through. That's why it's so important that we pray for each other. But God knows what storm you're going through, and he's the man. It doesn't matter if Brother Halliburton doesn't know. God knows. And he can carry you through it. Brother Halliburton can't carry you through it, but God can. Okay? So let's pray for each other, okay? Okay, let's go to Matthew. Who had Matthew 10, 34 and 39?
Think not that I have come to send peace on earth.
That's what he said. I've come to say peace on earth.
I cannot send peace,
He said, I came not send peace.
for I have come to set a man at variance,
Now, why nobody said now? He said, I've come to set a man at variance.
and the daughter against her mother,
Listen now.
and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law.
Uh-huh.
And a man's foe shall be they of his own household.
Read that again.
And a man's foe shall be they of his
Read that again.
And a man's foe shall be they of
No. No. Think about that. That don't make sense, does it?
usually come from within.
Doesn't make sense, dude. Jesus is teaching a lesson here. You know, when we take a stand for Christ, you may have to turn against brother, sister, mother, or father. But you know, Jesus said earlier, he that loveth mother and father more than me is not worthy of me. Brother Eugene Lawton, I think about a year ago better, was teaching in the Gospel Revival. And he said one night, I think it was a 16-year-old boy that came to the Gospel Revival. And he obeyed the gospel. And he went home and he told his parents he had obeyed the gospel. And his father found out he was a member of the Church of Christ. He put him outdoors. This young boy had nowhere to go, no income, and he was homeless. And he came back to Brother Eugene Lawton. And Brother Eugene Lawton got on the phone. He called this boy dad. He said, I need to talk to you. He said, tell me what's wrong with you. Man, talk with him. He said, your son did not join a cult. He is not involved in solicit sex. He became a Christian the other night. And you put him outdoors? He said, I told that man, something has gotten to be wrong with you. Your son gave his life to the Lord, and you put him outdoors? Because of that conversation, he took him back home. He said today, that young man, I think he's an elder at Fort Lauderdale Church of Christ today. But think about it. That young man accepted Christ. He took a stand for Christ. He almost lost the relationship with the Father because he became a Christian. That's what Jesus is teaching here. When you accept Christ, you may have to turn your back on mother and father, sister, brother. They may become your enemy. But Jesus said, if you love them more than me, you're not worthy of me. Believe it or not, I was probably the first member in my family to obey the gospel. I think I was 16 at the time. My sister and I came here. Brother Jerry John, an old minister, was preaching. An old lady had invited me to come to church with her, and I was young, all over the church. And my sister and I came here, and I remember hearing that old man, Brother Jerry John, teach the gospel for the first time. And I understood it as plain as day. My sister and I walked out, we obeyed the gospel. We went to the church. And we were members of the church, I think, about a year before my mama ever obeyed the gospel. And we would go home. Now, we're teenagers. I think my sister was 18, I was 16. We would go home and we would tell her, you need to go to church. Because my mama, she didn't go to church time. She went out, you know, at that time they go to clubs, all that stuff, to come home, drink. And we would tell her, you need to come to church. And finally, one day, I think she came to my minister and told him that my son is telling me what I need to tell him. Now, think about it. I'm just a kid, but I'm telling my parents about the Lord. I think that bothered her. And finally, one night, I think it was, she, in a gospel revival, she came forward and obeyed the gospel. So a lot of time, obeying Christ starts with you. It don't always start with your parents. That's just an experience I had as a teenager. But my sister and I were the first two members of our family to become members of the Church of Christ. But think about it. Had it not started with us, perhaps none of the rest of them would obey the gospel. The rest followed after we came, and we were just teenagers. We didn't wait on them to accept Christ. When we heard the gospel, we got to go. We accepted it for ourselves. Okay, what one you just reading, sis? Was it Matthew 10, 34 and 39? Right. Read that again, one more time, just do it, and then we may have to close.
Think not that I have come to send peace on earth.
Mm-hmm.
I came not to send peace,
Mhm.
but a sword.
Uh-huh.
But I am come to set a man at variance.
This is what he's saying now.
Father and the daughter against her mother,
Uh-huh.
and the daughter-in-law against his mother-in-law.
Uh-huh.
And a man's foe shall be they of his own household.
We're going to stop right there. You carry that home with you. Remember the question that I asked you in the beginning of the lesson? And the question was, have you been through a storm? Have you had a storm experience? Are you a storm survivor? Have you learned to appreciate the storm? If you have been in a storm and you are a storm survivor, you will learn to appreciate the storm because the purpose of the storms is to test our faith. And God tests our faith. So when you're going through a storm, you just tell yourself, God is testing my faith. He's trying to see how, because believe it or not, you're going to go through some more storms. And if you haven't been through a storm, just keep saying good morning. How the old folks say, just keep saying good morning, son. You're going to go through a storm. And you know, there are people that train us how to go through storm. We had Miss Bernice here not too long ago. She was telling us about stuff she told me I didn't know, about taking that battery and cutting yourself. Well, I didn't know that stuff. So we have people also that study storms, and they call them storm watchers, and they send information, and we'll know 7 days ahead when our storm gonna hit, because they spend their time studying on storms and where they're coming and where they're heading, and then they try to prepare you for it. You have to prepare for the storm. As we have to prepare for the physical storm, we also have to prepare for the spiritual storm. Keep that in mind. There are people that train us to prepare for the storm. And just like they train us in the physical world, the minister or our spiritual teachers, their job is to train us in the spiritual world, right, Brother Fall? So when we go through storms, we'll know how to deal with it. And because we remember the last storm I gone through. God got me through that storm. And as I said before, there is not a storm in your life that you're going to experience that God can't get you through. But you must keep the faith. If you lose the faith, you will never survive the storm. Thank you.